President Biden spoke out today on campus protests that have broken out across the country in connection with the Israel-Hamas war. The president said he supports the right to protest, but denounced, quote, chaos and hate speech.
It's against the law when violence occurs. Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest.
The president's remarks come after police rounded up more than 130 people on UCLA's Los Angeles campus overnight, and just days after New York authorities arrested 100 protesters at Columbia University. For more, let's bring in Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes. Nancy, President Biden hasn't said much on these campus protests, which have been going on for several weeks now. Why did he decide to speak today?
Nicole, White House officials say it was the sheer number of violent altercations over the past 48 hours or so that prompted the president to decide that he needed to speak out today and draw a very bright line between speech that is protected. He argued that free speech is a bedrock principle in this country and that the American citizenry has a right to be heard, but that anytime that speech veers into violence, causes people to be unable to get to classes or to be fearful for their safety, anytime it involves breaking windows, vandalism, that kind of thing, that is not protected, and that's what he said has to stop.
And the president seemed to walk a fine line between the right to protest and denouncing violence and anti-Semitism. Let's take a listen.
There should be no place on any campus, no place in America for anti-Semitism or threats of violence against Jewish students. There is no place for hate speech or violence of any kind, whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or discrimination against Arab Americans or Palestinian Americans. It's simply wrong.
So overall, how are his comments being received? Does the White House feel this could help lower the temperature?
It really depends on the audience. I think that there are a lot of students. We've done interviews across the country today on various campuses where there are students who feel frustrated that he wasn't calling out, for example, police for taking a heavy hand with protesters, who were frustrated that at the end of that speech, when the president was asked, are you going to change any of your policies as a result of what the protesters have been calling for example, cutting off military aid to Israel, the president said no. So certainly there are a lot of student protesters who weren't satisfied. There were many Biden allies who did feel that he needed to say something, that he needed to weigh in after all this unrest was brewing at college campuses. So they were glad that he did that, and they were glad that he made it very clear that he does not disagree with these protesters, that he believes that they have the right to say what they're saying, but that they just need to do it in a peaceful way.
And to that point, and to expand on that, many Republicans as well, from the former president down to the House Speaker, have criticized the president and his administration's handling of these protests. Did that have any bearing or influence on the president coming forward? I mean, just walk us through some of the political dynamics here.
He's been under a great deal of pressure. In fact, his Republican opponent, Donald Trump, was doing a rally yesterday in the battleground state of Wisconsin, where he said, where is the president? He's been totally silent on this. There are other Republicans who have pushed President Biden to call in the National Guard, who have argued that he needs to take a tougher stance in favor of Israel, in favor of Jewish students. So he's been kind of getting pressure from all sides. There are Democrats who are arguing there needs to be a ceasefire now and that he needs to call for one. You could kind of understand why he had chosen to sort of stay out of sight on this issue, because there's no question that whatever he says, he is going to get hit. But it was becoming more and more of a campaign issue, Nicole, particularly because young students, like the ones who are protesting, are such a key voting bloc for him.
All right, Nancy Cordes, thank you so much for joining us from the White House.